Guardians played some high roller tables at the draft on Monday. They came away with a bunch of players who can't even legally go to a casino, actually.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show today. Today's episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com, yeah! The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. What can we say about the Guardians? We want to thank you for making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day, wherever you get podcasts. Thank you to Everyday Pork Chop Sandwiches, who was very active in the chats the last 2 days. I guess we can say that one thing we know is the Guardians like them young. Is that going to get me in trouble? I mean, that was the theme of the afternoon. Was Cleveland likes them young when it comes to their pitching, young and violent. It's an interesting combination. So we'll get into that. But first, I am Jeff Ellis, one of your hosts here. For that, I've been one of the original hosts of the Locked On MLB Network here. Before that, I was a national draft and prospect analyst at Scouting 24/7, as well as your 18th favorite blogger at every Cleveland sports blog that has ever existed or will exist.
18th favorite blogger for the 18-year-olds that the Guardians took in the draft on Monday. I'm just your other co-host. I've been covering the Guardians farm system since 2007. I haven't been focused on the draft as long as Jeff, but can definitely say this has been an interesting.
You might have gone slightly deeper than me this year, I would argue. I feel like there's definitely points where you had some guys more than I had. It was nice. We had a good spread of it. We covered. I liked when we had the Detroit guys on, and they were like,
that was fun.
They were kind of amazed. When I pulled out who their 10th round pick was.
Yeah. And those guys go deep too. If you guys didn't have a chance to listen to our day 2 live stream, we had some friends on from Tigers Minor League Report. Rogelio Castillo and Chris Brown, who do great work on the Tigers minor league system. They're awesome. Yeah, it was a lot of fun just to have somebody come in and pitch it.
They're the reason I'm on this network. Side note, they're the ones who they started out with Locked On Tigers. It was a little too much doing the daily grind for them, but they recommended me and they brought me in. So I can say that, like, if you like me here, you can thank those two guys.
I met them at Prospects Live when I started contributing there. So a big reason I've also been able to do a lot of extra work because I met them too. And then those guys are grinders, man. They put in a lot of work too. So check them out. If you think we put a lot of work in, those guys put in just as much, and they're well respected by the Tigers organization as well, including former Cleveland Indian Ryan Garko, that he's been on their podcast. We mentioned that. All right, let's get to the Guardians. So the Guardians took a big swing today on prep arms, 3 on day 2, 4 total so far through the first 2 days when you include Braylon Dowdy at pick 36 on day 1. The Guardians, Jeff, you and I agree on this. I think a lot of people agree on this. The strength of the prep class this year was prep arms.
It wasn't even close.
A little light this year. Yeah, it wasn't even close. It's a lot of, and prep arms are always high risk, high reward. And this is the strength of the class. This is what I think the Guardians did. They drafted to the strength of the class because they had the money to spend. I don't know,
this is weird hand motions here. If I had 4 silos for, like, college hitters, college pitchers, and prep pitcher, it would go in terms of depth, overall, just depth, not like at the top, but depth, just how deep it goes. It would have gone prep pitching, college hitting, college pitching, prep hitting. Like, it was hitting was very weak. Prep hitting this year, like, it quickly ran out, and I was struggling in terms of my own placement. So it was a situation where the depth, not necessarily saying the best players, but the largest amount of solid players were pitchers, and Cleveland leaned into it. And the last time Cleveland leaned into it was the greatest pitching class that I've seen in terms of depth, which was, of course, the 2021 class, right? Like, that was the one where it was
a lot of that also do with COVID too, which they didn't have the benefit of.
Yeah, but that was also that was a super deep college class, and they just leaned into it that year. This year, it's a super deep prep class, and they leaned into the depth of the class.
Right. And you have to draft to the strength of the class. You can't overreach. You have to take your guys. You have to take who is in front of you, and you have to take the best player on your board or your guys, just because. And Cleveland had money to spend. They needed to spend their money somehow. And unfortunately, you can only take what's available to you. So they put their chips in on the prep pitching, which was the strength of the class. They bet on that, and we'll see what happens. let's start with Joey Oakie. So Joey Oakie, a guy I liked a little bit more than Jeff coming into the draft here, a Iowa high school kid who has a really low arm slot. So there's a really fun sweeper there. He's listed at 6'3", 200. He's probably more like 6'1".
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing about high school pitchers. Like Braylon Dowdy's 6'1", probably 6 foot. When you take a high school pitcher, you want a guy who is a little more projectable physically. So Dowdy and Oakie don't fit that, but Oakie can in the mid-90s. He does have a nice slider. There is some issues with the delivery. I think that a lot of these high school guys, there's a lot of risk. That's what it is.
Every single guy that they drafted has questions with their delivery. That's why I talked about the violence of their delivery and or just like the moving parts in their delivery. They didn't draft anyone with a clean profile, and that seems intentional. It seems that was a way to maybe because guys slid. Maximize Chase Mobley in the 10th round. Like he was a guy that people have talked about as a potential first rounder. He was probably no worse than a late second, early third round talent. But
I had him as a day one guy.
He's got a weird arm hang. Sullivan, he goes out there looking like every single time he's trying to throw a pitch that's going to cause him to need Tommy John surgery. They went for, Majors has delivery. None of these guys have typical delivery. So I think with them being the pitching clinic that they are, maybe. Yeah, he's probably the cleanest one in the group. But I think they think that this is something that's easy to fix. And I'm not going to argue with them when it comes to fixing pitching or helping pitchers. That is not my area to contest with this organization. And for everyone being like, I want bats, I get it. Like this team has struggled offensively for a while. And then on top of that, bats are the fun thing, right? Like hitting is fun. Chicks dig the long ball. That's what we learned in the 90s. I'm referencing a commercial for people who don't get it. I'm not trying to be sexist.
I've seen it. Tom Glavine, Craig Maddox.
We got a pair of Cy Young Award winners over here. That's the best part of that commercial. But with Cleveland, they also we've spent the first 6 months complaining about how they don't have depth at the back of their system, and like guys weren't moving quickly pitching wise. Like they needed to address the backfill, and they don't internationally get a lot of arms, so they need to get a few more arms in the draft. That is where they need to lean. And again, they leaned into the depth of the draft. They took 4 of the top 50 guys on MLB's list. No other team did that. They took 5 of the top 100, almost 6 in 11 picks. 6 of their 11 picks were top 120 guys. That's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, again, like we said, you can only draft what's available to you. Cleveland had all the money to spend this year in a draft that was very prep pitching heavy. That was the strength of the prep class. The college class was college bats, but college bats were the early ones. It was not as fun late for the college bats. So again, you can only take what's in front of you, and they had to spend this money. They were going to spend all of it, and we're going to talk about that later in segment 3. But they had to spend the money, and this is where it makes sense. Like you're not going to go and say, well, we want to take a bat here instead of a pitcher because we haven't taken any hitters. You're not going to take a guy in the 3rd or 4th round if you don't believe in the hitter and pay that money for them. Like you're not going to do that because then you're just giving away money for nothing. Like you're going to take the guy with the most potential that makes the most sense for you. And obviously they did some shifting of money so they could get guys like Sullivan and Mobley later, obviously, but you do that because those are the guys that make the most sense to spend the money on. Like if you're going to the blackjack table and you're betting on, I guess you're kind of betting on 11 and you're hoping to pull up an ace or a 10 or not an ace. I'm sorry, a face card. Like that's what it is. You're kind of, you have to spend, if you have money to spend, you have to spend the money somehow. And this was the best way to do it, I think, for them. You and I historically don't like prep pitchers because they're the riskiest. They're the second riskiest demographic. Although I will say Paul Gillespie, I don't think you really liked my, I don't think you liked my question about that. He was like, well, they're all risky because it's a draft. And I'm like, okay, but prep catchers are risky. Prep pitchers are risky. Prep pitchers maybe are a little bit less risky. You think, I know. But that's the demographic that costs money. They had money to spend. It was unwise to spend it on things that didn't make sense, like high school bats and reaching on a college bat in those situations. So that's why it made the most sense. No,
agreed. You always take best player available. That's just end of story. Best player available. So
that's, I guess, best now, guys on their board.
Always and ever.
Oakie's a 2-sport athlete. So one of the things Paul Gillespie said, their vice president of scouting, talked about how he's a good basketball player. We've talked about how Iowa doesn't start college or high school baseball until May. So he was rolling from high school basketball into high school baseball very quickly. So they're hoping that dropping the focus on, or just focusing on baseball only, and then having more time on that will help, obviously. So we'll see there. There's some good stuff to work with. He's a cold weather arm. He doesn't have as much exposure, which is good. Those are, again, there's no guarantee that works out. Cameron Sullivan, also kind of a cold weather arm, right? That's an Indiana guy,
kid. Yeah, the Indiana history. That's one of the scary ones. The other thing I want to say, though, Key, is if you listened to us yesterday, you know that he was overused late, and that his stuff backed up due to it, and that also helps the Guardians maybe save a little money because he was not at his best. He was a guy you and I both thought was maybe the best prep arm in this class in the fall. Like, let's be honest, you and I both discussed him as a choice for 36. Deadly slider, maybe the best prep slider. Or my buddy Taylor Blake Ward keeps saying he reminds him of Troy Percival. Thinks he's going to be a reliever. A lot of people have that thought, but that's the thing. They're going to try to fix all of these guys, and we'll see. They went for ceiling. They went for guys who have high upside. Spin. Every guy can spin. Every guy is a plus in character. We'll get to that as well with Sullivan and Mobley and some of these other guys and things, but we've barely scratched the surface on this one today so far. So we got a lot more to talk about
from day 2 of the draft. Absolutely. So stick around for just a ton more coming up on the high school class and the college pitchers as well.
But first, let's talk about FanDuel, one of our longtime sponsors. You know, I love the sponsors who stick with us no matter what, stick with us through thick and thin, and that is the good people at FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. I'll point out that they even had MLB draft odds. And if one of our listeners took advantage of me releasing information and made some money, we found out on FanDuel. So this summer, head over to FanDuel, like one of our listeners, and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Visit FanDuel.com for yourself. And then let's now talk about our good friends next. I know I keep saying good friends at Prize Picks, but Prize Picks is a fun site. And by the way, let's go to All-Star content. And Justin, I want you to can you be a voice from the grave? I don't know if you can in our new formatting.
I'm here.
But okay, I want to talk about one of the things you can bet on is more or less on miles per hour. Paul Skeens, 101.4, more or less. I say less. That's pretty high. I think 102.7 for Mason Miller. I want to go less on that one. And let's talk about Manual Class A, 100.9. I say go the over there. We know Class A routinely does a 101. So that stands out. Your slowest guy on the other end, Tyler Anderson at 90.4. I honestly don't know him well enough to say, but that's fun. That is a fun thing they have going on. So download the app, go to the website, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's right, a first deposit match up to $100. Download the app, go to the website, use the code LOCKEDONMLB, all one word, all lowercase, to get that first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Check out Locked On Sports today for 24/7 streaming of local hosts that know your team the best. Forget the screaming, check the streaming, get local opinions on people that know your team the best on the Locked On Sports today feed over on YouTube and the Amazon.
Do they have that written in there, or did you come up with that? The streaming and screaming?
That was me. That was all me.
I was going to say, I don't think that was in the feed. That was really good. That's why I wanted to give you some credit. I was like, that's awesome. And I don't think that's it. I'm like, that's not in the feed, but it should be.
Yeah, we've talked for 5 hours today, and I'm still coming up with quips. This is great. Part of the Podcast Sports Network and your team every day.
Thank you. The last time I counted up in a 24-hour period, we're at like 18,000 views. So I just want to say a quick thank you to all of our listeners again for everything you've done. We're going to do day 3, and by we, it's going to be me. So join us. If it bombs, I won't go the whole time, but if you're there, I will, as long as my internet doesn't die again, because Spectrum stinks. Cameron
By the
Sullivan,
way, you're right on Ryan Forcucci. He had Tommy John in June.
Okay, so I had some good intel. Cameron Sullivan is, I believe we discovered, a valedictorian. He's from Indiana. Now, Indiana prep pitching has been incredibly ugly over the years. Kansas City took Nolan Watson and Ash Russell. There was 2 guys who had first round grades.
Don't compare them to the Royals. The Royals don't know how to develop pitching.
But here's the thing. Sullivan, I didn't write him up because I thought he was going to school. Everything on him is how hard of a sign he was going to be. No, everyone signs. End of story. Everyone signs on day 2. It's not a concern. We're not going to even say anything more than everyone's going to sign. They took him knowing that they can sign him. He has a lot of effort in his delivery, but again, high spin rate, high character, high stuff. Not the biggest guy. Isn't he only like a 6'1", 6'2" righty? I want to say in my mind, he's not.
He's 6'2", so he's probably 6'1". All these guys
6'1" or 6 feet even.
They took.
So they he's a undersized righty with big spin and great character. Super smart kid, very good student, and he fit their type. And it's interesting because when I first started doing the draft, close to a decade ago, back when I was at Indians Prospect Insider before it became Indians Baseball Insider, this was their thing, was these undersized righties, and now they're back to it. So we'll see. It's interesting that they're doing it. I like the pick. Don't get me wrong. I am not crapping on Sullivan at all. With both Sullivan and Oakie, you're looking at guys who are probably 6-foot righties. Great stuff, great spin, great secondary offerings. If it works out, you have a potential 2 or 3 starter. And if it doesn't work out, you're maybe looking at elite relievers with both guys. And if it really doesn't work out, well, it's a prep arm.
That's usually how it works. Yeah. Sullivan was going to be a business analytics major at Notre Dame. So really smart guy. They have prioritized these guys that are smart and they know how to work. They know how to interpret information. Like, again, Bazana knows how to interpret information. Yes. Analytics and that stuff. Dowdy was the same way. Cozart has been around baseball forever.
They've talked about like knowing how that they will meet guys where they need to be to teach them. It's like when Paul Gillespie talked about that in our meeting, like past midday yesterday, it was like, I'm like, this is what we talk about in teacher meetings when we talk about the special ed students. I'm a special ed teacher by day. So it was interesting to hear, but I also think they have dealt with a few too many knuckleheads recently. There are some guys in the system you and I know are knuckleheads that have really kind of tired them out. And I think they're looking for guys that are A, going to put in the time consistently, B, put in the effort, and C, understand a little bit quicker. So I think they're just tired of knuckleheads. And this draft has shown they're not going to go. And I know people are probably like, oh, you probably mean 99. 99 was actually pretty good at the intake of knowledge. Like he made some poor choices, but he was good at knowledge intake. He is not what I'm talking about at all here. Like he was a guy who wanted more data as well, from what I understand. So that's not who I'm talking about. So, but they want guys like honestly, they want guys who take in information like 99 did. Like he was someone who took it and processed.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah. Chase Mobley. I mean, I think we can probably both agree we like Joey Oakie the most of these 4 prep. Well, I think I like Dowdy more. I would say Dowdy, Oakie, Sullivan. Yeah, I have Mobley ahead of Sullivan. I
agree. No, yes, we're saying
Mobley. I do like a lot though. Again, he is 6'5". I know the arm swing is a little weird. There's some very weird mechanics here, but he is one of the younger guys in the class. He just turned 18 last month. Comes at a really low approach angle.
You heard it here. Justin likes him young.
I did not say that at all. That was never said here. Creates interesting angles on the fastball, and again, another guy that reportedly has a plus makeup. It looks like Chase Mobley unfortunately lost his father a couple years ago at a very young age.
They Paul Gillespie in our meeting talked about him overcoming things very specifically.
So
I think we can say that.
It looks like they've gotten to know him and the family pretty well, and they were extremely impressed at how he handled that. And it's tough for anybody.
It's incredible. It's
very unfortunate to lose a parent at that age.
Yes, my mom lost her own father in middle school. That's one of those things I've spent my whole life, like just seeing the impact of that on a person. So it's a difficult thing. And again, he's a plus kid. The other really interesting thing, not to go from the, not to go from, I don't want to say like a darker point, but like a point of what's going on, but just to talk about I thought it was very interesting that when we were again talking with Paul Gillespie after the draft, that he talked about how they are in constant contact with these kids and situations change. And he wouldn't say it directly, but I'm like, I asked him, I go, as a follow-up, so you're saying that sometimes maybe guys require less or their demands come down, and he gave me some word salad.
You said things were fluid. You said, are things fluid?
Yes,
he said fluid's the best way to describe it.
He liked you're right. He did like my word. I'm like, how fluid are things? And he's like, that's a great word. It's very fluid. Which again, maybe not the best word with my jokes today, but I think Mobley's price might have come down. That was my first text to Justin when we were there. Now, why did they take him in the 10th? I think this is important to talk about. So if you take him in the 11th round, let's say he costs $1.15 million, like $1,150,000. In the 10th round, all of that money counts against your pool. If you take him in the 11th round, only $1 million does. The $150,000 doesn't count. So you can inflate and give guys more money on day 3. I think Cleveland didn't want to mess around. And the other thing is Cleveland could give the money right now. If you start on day 3, I think all of a sudden a lot of other teams can offer more money. And I think Cleveland was making these offers to get guys and get the guys they liked. And I honestly think with Mobley, he might have been the top guy on their board. He may not have been, but I think they started calling guys and being like, we have this much left. Will you take it? And, maybe Mobley was their first guy. I could see him being their first guy. And he's like, I will. And that was the end of it. Or maybe they call it, I don't know, Garrett Scholl. I'm just throwing a name out there. And he said, no, this is not based on any intel. I'm just throwing a name. Maybe they called Justin and he goes, nope, sorry. I will not take your $1 million plus.
I do not want $1 million. No,
and then we're going through, but that's how this works. So in this case, I think they didn't want it. They had an advantage and they pressed the advantage. I think tomorrow they've maybe got a few shekels left, but we'll save that. We'll save and get into that. I did some math and had Justin check it. So we know it's right.
Oh, the math is all wrong. God, yeah. We'll talk about the college pitchers. We'll talk about the money left for them. And we'll talk about maybe some guys they didn't get and some regrets there. We'll also talk about who's left for day 3.
Stupid Braves.
Yeah, a lot of
stupid
a lot of guys just being taken off the board quickly right before. Today's episode of Lockdown Guardians is, of course, brought to you by Booking.com. Yeah. Summer travel's heating up. And we know Braylon Dowdy's got to come from California to Cleveland. And Joey Oakie's got to take a plane from Iowa. And Cameron Sullivan doesn't have to go that far. He's in Indiana. Chase Mobley's got to fly in from Florida. Hopefully, they're checking on Booking.com. They've got a lot of money coming their way. Spend it on Booking.com because they can make any city, any stay, make you a fan of that city. And they can use it to book any hotel in Cleveland and then just start enjoying Cleveland with bed and breakfast, resorts, so much more. Find your perfect baseball stay, even your rivals and your new hometown. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city. Book today on Booking.com app or on the site, Booking.com app, Booking.com, Booking. Yeah. I believe you can check out the All-Star game if you're not watching. You should be watching. I know Jeff's going to be watching intently. But if you can't watch, listen on the SiriusXM app, search baseball All-Star game, and then Friday, search Guardians to get back into Guardians action on Friday. All right, we kind of already talked about why Cleveland went pitching and prep heavy. Again, Paul Gillespie said this was not their plan. Like, it's not like they came in today saying, we're going to take all pitchers, or we're going to take 3 prep pitchers today. Again, this just came to them. You draft to the strength of the class. You draft to your board. That's why teams set these boards ahead of time, and guys come off them. You say, okay, this is the next best guy available. Do we want to go with him? Do we have a deal worked out? Do we need to save money? Do we need to go to the next guy? All that kind of stuff, and all that's built in. So for anybody who thinks, why did they go all pitchers? Why didn't they try to draft some bats? They were trying to draft the best player on their board. This is just how it played out. And again, you do have to account for money. You have to account for, when you take a Joey Oakie, if they really liked him at 84, and they said, okay, well, Joey Oakie's going to get, $1.5 million or $2 million. We have to reprioritize and shift some money around. And then when they did that, guess what? Chase Mobley was still falling. And they said, hey, Chase Mobley, here's some money, or whoever. And that's who they took their money, like Jeff said. So they didn't intend to do this. They just had guys on their board. Maybe Chase Mobley was the top guy on their board. He was falling, and they said, hey, let's try to see if he'll take this deal. Let's get him down the board. That's usually how it works. So,
or maybe even too, like another crazy level to this could be Chase Mobley maybe came down on his desire, but they then had to figure out how to get that exact amount. So maybe that's a situation where, like, maybe they're sitting there in the 9th round and like, okay, we need to shave 50,000 off this pick. Let's see if Matson will take 140. Like that is what is happening throughout. It's not just about, oh, he's going to take this much. It's how can we get there, and who else do we like? So should we start with Matson? Maybe he's not first up, but since I mentioned him.
No, let's just really quickly. We'll run through a couple quick facts, and then we'll pick out our favorites here. So I'll just run really quickly. Rafe Schlesinger I liked him this year a little bit.
You're a bigger fan than I was.
He was starting and relieving from Miami. I don't know if the fastball velocity is going to hold in game. I mean, in the ACC tournament, maybe he was run down a little bit from the season, but he was only like 89, 92 in the ACC tournament. But reports said he was up to 97 this year. I think that's more of a reliever. Yeah, maybe that was more early in the season. Yeah,
he's going to be a reliever.
He can miss bats a little bit. He doesn't walk too many guys. It's an interesting mix. It's a deceptive profile. I think he's a reliever, but there's some interesting metrics there. Aidan Major is going to have Tommy John here soon, so he will not pitch this year. He will likely not pitch most of next season either.
He pitched in the like
too much.
Okay, so on top of the fact that like 2 guys needed surgery from West Virginia, they had him come back and pitch in the postseason, even though he needed Tommy John surgery. So his arm was already in bad shape, and they let him pitch some more. Like, that's crazy to me.
It's just abuse. The only thing that maybe the only thing that helped him there doing that is he endeared himself to teams with toughness and competitiveness. That's only I can really think of. But my God, it was a stupid decision by West Virginia, and that coach should be embarrassed by doing that to a kid. And Major doesn't have a ton of great. I mean, there's some great metrics on his pitches. He does get good induced vertical break on his fastball. There is a mix there. He's had control issues in the past, so we'll see what Tommy John does for him, and hope that things end up okay with him. But again, this is a guy who's off the radar for the next year. Yeah, and they said that they probably envisioned bringing him back as a starter, but we'll see. Yeah. Just he's got to get.
Yeah, they said they're going to sit down and talk with him about the next steps. Like he hasn't had surgery. Yeah. They're going to sit there and discuss, and he'll probably go see whoever they prefer. It's all of it. Yeah. And hey, this way West Virginia doesn't have to pay for the surgery. Cleveland does. So that's why West Virginia is like, no, don't.
Caden Favors won the 6th round, and he is a senior sign. That's a big money saver for them. But he's a strike thrower. It's a 4-pitch mix. The best thing about Caden Favors is he gets good extension. He is a kind of a lanky guy. He's got some long limbs, so it helps him to stuff play up. There's some good data out there on him, but I caution it because it's against a very weak competition, so I don't know how much to trust it. But I think out of all the guys they took today, he has the best chance to start because he has a clean delivery, like you said, and he's got deception and he throws a lot of strikes. So I think that's good. He's
definitely the cleanest profile.
Austin Peterson-ish. Yeah, like he's not going to be as good as Austin Peterson, but I think he's Austin Peterson light from the left side.
He's got some Adam Scott there as a lefty. Adam Scott, the good version. He never quite came back from his injuries quite the same. But I think you compare him to another senior sign. Though Scott got a little bit more than I think he'll get.
He's going to go under. And you want to talk about Zsak and Matson a little bit. But let's be brief so we can get to some other stuff.
Zsak is fun and not fun. He's already had 2 Tommy John surgeries. He's only had 1 year of college pitching. He's currently in the Cape, but dude is a lefty and throws 99. His command is atrocious. He is a blank slate with a strong arm. He is a reliever. I think he's a reliever all the way at this point. He's already kind of behind, but he's a 6'3", 185. He's a big, strong kid who can absolutely throw gas. Maybe he gets full slot. Maybe he gets a little bit under. I've got some money to show, but I like him. And then Sean Matson, his sister is more famous than him. She is like the LeBron of field hockey. She has just been utterly phenomenal. Sean was the Cape Cod reliever of the year for all those people telling me Cape Cod doesn't matter. Last year, he's currently pitching in the Cape and doing well. I asked if he's going to be a starter or reliever, and they said he could do either. So, he's going to be a solid depth arm. They need more starting pitching depth, relief depth. We'll see where it goes. He's had good command and control. Super athletic.
I want to point out too about the comments from Paul today as well to say that they talked more about molding Cameron Sullivan, talking about like what they should do with him and how to fix how to work with him. I got the sense that he is the guy that needs the most work as Sullivan. So that was just based on the comments, like just talking about what they would need to do to partner with him to work on certain things. And all right, let's talk about money real quick. Jeff did some quick math about day 3. We want to talk about day 3 before we get out of here. Jeff says not a whole lot of money to spend. So let's be quick through this, and then we'll talk about a couple day 3 guys, and then we'll get out of here.
The max they can spend with overage is $9,250,000. I'm going to spend that. You can see on the bottom here, this is like $500,000, $500,000 part. So I did very conservative numbers, and I have them at 180,000 under slot, and that's being very conservative. So that makes me think that 180,000 has already been spent as well. I think they've probably spent just about every dime. I think, maybe less than 20,000 left on the board. So tomorrow is going to be about who's willing to take 150,000. I got to go look up like Jake Miller 2 years ago and see what his situation was, because like he was the last guy where they just threw every last dime at him and he signed as a 20th round pick. And that may be what they tried to do again with that last pick. Was Ryan Marone their 20th rounder too last year? Sometimes they take a guy at 20 where it's like, hey, we'll throw what we got if you're willing to take it. And they give the guy a chance to think about it. In this case, we'll have to see. But I think they weaponized everything, and I think they spent all of it. I think tomorrow is $150,000. So tomorrow's a depth day. There might be a few guys like last year. I believe someone got 50,000, someone got like 100. Johnny Tincher, surprisingly, their 11th round pick. Normally, they're most. I've argued for years the 11th round's more valuable than the 10th because it's the reset round. But now this team is spending like crazy in the 10th, and the 11th was an underslot.
All right, day 3 guys to know. Jeff says Cody Schreier. They drafted him. They interested him out of high school. He's at UCLA. He's in the transfer portal. I have Terrence Kyle in here, who was his cousin was in our chat from the
he wanted today. Us. He was like, hopefully he gets drafted.
I don't think he's getting taken. Jeremiah Jenkins from Maine is a power hitter with patience and a very goofy swing. He's interesting. Drew Rerick is probably going to college. Cade Obermueller is a guy with good data, another Iowa pitcher, but zero control. So he'd be interesting. John Gazdar is a shortstop who probably doesn't play shortstop. He's at Austin P, but he has a lot of power. Xander Darby is a contact, no power guy. Daniel Lativia is a Guardians type control pitcher from Grand Canyon who was hurt this year. Jeff has mentioned Riley Hughes on here before. He might be an easy senior sign. He's an Ohio kid from Geauga. Yeah. Tomorrow, my guy is Sebastian Gongora from Louisville. He's a 5th-year senior. He's from Ohio as well, Cincinnati area. And he played at Dayton, and I think he's a strike thrower who could be very interesting. That's my guy tomorrow, plus Gazdar and Darby. I don't think they'll take Gazdar.
We didn't see a lot of Ohio kids. I always think that's kind of a fun thing to look at. We saw back-to-back picks. That was kind of fun with 2 of them. Trey Lipsy from Ohio State's a guy who's kind of slid. I think he's kind of a fun guy to look at. And then, Wright State is normally a complete factory. And was it Sammy Sass, I think, is the catcher who had a great freshman year, then struggled and was strong this year. Catchers always going. Boston Smith was a Cincinnati transfer who had some really good numbers. So I'm kind of curious to see if some of the Wright State guys get going. And then probably the biggest name, Bobby Bozer, South Florida. He's got some right-handed pop. He hit 27 home runs combined the last 2 years. He's doing awesome in the Cape right now. He was so last year. He walks. He does strike out. That's why he's still there. But I mean, this past year, I guess he didn't really walk that much. Let's be fair. He walked more on the Cape. He's walked more on the Cape than he did, but he also only played 34 games. But yeah, there's some right-handed pop. He's played every position but catcher, and probably more of a second baseman. But for if you're looking for a little more power, he's a standout. He's I think a top 250 prospect is still available. So I don't know if you can get him, but if you can, he's a junior, so there's a chance that you take what's left and you're like, hey, this is our 11th rounder. So he's a guy who intrigues me. And come on, you're not going to mention Joe Oyama, your guy at all?
I like Joe Oyama. He's kind of this year's
Riku Nishida.
Nishida made a lot more contact. Yeah. Oyama has a little more power, so that's fun. But yeah, I like him as well. And Lyle Mel Green, I don't know, would be an interesting guy from Austin P, just those smaller schools. All right, Jeff is going to be with you during the draft at 2:00 Eastern on Tuesday. I have to work. I might chime in through Twitter if I can, and then we'll be back in your feeds on Wednesday to wrap up the entirety of the draft. So thank you all for everything, and we're looking forward to bringing it to you. And good job by Jose Ramirez in the home run derby. I know he didn't win, but he had a fun first round, and he kind of left out the second round, but a good appearance.
He did better than the person who sang the national anthem. That is for sure.
We all did better than that. Strive to be better than that, folks.
Yes. But again, big shout out to all of you who have made the last few days very memorable. I have put up a now for every single pick on day 2. So check those out if you want additional data. And we have you covered. We continue to have you covered, and we thank you for enjoying that coverage. Remember to rate and review, tell a friend. Let's get up to 3,000. We're less than 100 away. And go Guardians, go.